What's going on, everybody out there? This is Grand Prix GTP02 here once again, up here at Humble Hyundai here in North Houston, Texas. And today, for y'all's viewing pleasure and entertainment, I'm here to introduce to everybody out there a prime example of what happens when an auto manufacturer turns their top-selling mid-sized family sedan into a two-door sports car. What you guys are looking at right now is the 2011 Nissan Altima Coupe. Now, the Nissan Altima, in its own right, in this particular car's generation, was a pretty sensible vehicle. Up to 30 plus miles per gallon on the interstate highway, choice of 4 or 6-cylinder power plants, and Nissan's reputation for pretty much bulletproof reliability. Now, in the case of the four-door Altima, there is a whole slew of competitors out there on the market. You have everything from the Hyundai Sonata, the Ford Fusion, to the more sensible options such as a Toyota Camry, Honda Accord, and so on and so on. But as far as the Nissan Altima Coupe is concerned, there really is not as long a list of competitors because there aren't very many auto manufacturers that have actually taken this concept to heart. Now, the only competitors that I can actually think of off the top of my head that would compete with this particular car directly are cars like the Hyundai Genesis Coupe, but really that's about it because, again, there aren't very many auto manufacturers that have turned their mid-sized family sedan into a two-door sports car. But the one you're looking at right here is the sportiest of the bunch. This is a 2011 Altima Coupe 3.5 SR. That, of course, means that this one, not only being the top-of-the-line car, with, in this case, missing a couple of packages such as leather seats and so on, that means that this one here packs almost 300 horsepower all inside of this beautiful coupe-like structure. Now, the Altima Coupe that you see right here is actually still in production in one form or another. Nissan actually has not changed the Altima Coupe at all for 2014, 2015, and so on. Now, what would be awesome is to see the current generation Altima, which really in its own right looks like a baby Maxima, actually be turned into a car like this, because this generation right here was around from 2008 to 2009 all the way up until today's generation. So that's quite a long time for Nissan to actually carry on a vehicle like this. Now, you can have the Altima Coupe with a couple of different engine choices, both of which came with only one specific transmission. There was a manual transmission option available in the early years, but after a while, Nissan actually did away with that, which is kind of a dumb move on their part, because why would you want to buy a hot-looking two-door sports car that is only available as an automatic? Now, I could think of a couple different reasons for that, but that's really beside the point. You could have this car either as a 2.5-liter four-cylinder, which only produced about 170 horsepower, if my mind serves me correct, or you could have it like this. Now, this car here, and you'll see it here in just a bit, is packing Nissan's VQ Series 3.5-liter double overhead cam V6. And it, like I said, it packs almost 300 horsepower all inside of this coupe-like body, which means that it is capable of some pretty hefty performance. But there are two things about this car, for me in particular, that really let it down. For one, it's front-wheel drive. It is not the rear-wheel drive, you know, bloodthirsty sports car that most people would expect it to be with it looking the way it does. And on top of this, this car in particular here is available only with a continuously variable automatic transmission, or CVT for short. Now, what a CVT does is basically alters the transmission continuously to allow for optimal performance. The only problem is you don't get that same kind of thrust forward that you normally would get with either a manual transmission or a conventional automatic. Now, the 3.5 SR, like I said, is the top of the line trim. You could have, back in the day, you could have had the 3.5 SE, which was a little bit more loaded out than this, but Nissan decided to do away with that trim, and they instead replaced it with the 3.5 SR. Now, the SR, in addition to being the top level trim, is probably one of the most customizable trims that you can ever get. You can either have it in its most basic format like this, or you can really go balls to the wall and throw a whole ton of options at it. You could have things like an exterior spoiler mounted on the back. It was kind of like a whale tail spoiler. It came off the back maybe about yay far or so, but it actually gave the car real curb appeal. It actually looked like something, well, out of a Gran Turismo video game. Now, I've always loved the Altima Coupe with that kind of long nose, the short tail, and that gaping wide interior inside of it being a two-door, it actually is quite a nice little package to have. Now, the one I'm showing you here has actually done a fair few miles. This one has done over 61,000 miles already, but it's still as fresh as a daisy. It runs perfect, it drives perfect, and that V6 is just to die for. It sounds absolutely awesome. Now, before we continue, just a few little quick facts about this particular Altima that you're looking at right here. This one is finished in the non-metallic super black and is paired with the charcoal sort of velour-like cloth upholstery. However, here at the front, you can see that there are quite a lot of options actually added onto the front of this, and some of which come as standard. As you can see, this one here has the halogen projector headlights and halogen high beams. I do believe back in the day you could get these with high-intensity discharge lights. Maybe I'm wrong, but as far as what I've seen, this one here has the halogen. It's sort of like that yellowish tint. Does come standard with fog lights. You've got this nice little chrome trim grille up here in the front. But looking at it, if you were to put this and a four-door Altima next to each other, there are very few differences aside from the obvious fact that this one is missing a couple of rear doors. However, that being said, this car can actually still be practical. It does have somewhat of a usable back seat. Now, not for people of my stature. I'm about 6'1", and the back seat of this car is pretty much useless to me. But in other words, I mean, if you're a little bit shorter, you actually could use this car as a practical four-door, or a four-seater rather, run-around vehicle, depending on what you may be thinking about your friends that go in the back of this thing. Because again, with that rear kind of sloping roofline, I guarantee you, if you try to sit in the back of this car and you're over about 6 foot, 6'1", and maybe I'm wrong because I've made wrong guesses like that before, I can only assume that somebody's going to end up hitting their head on that roof right there, because as you can see, the roof comes up kind of like a normal Altima, but then it slopes way down in the back. Almost the same kind of concept, and I know this vehicle's nowhere close to this, but it's almost kind of the same concept as the Hyundai Veloster, where you've got this really kind of sloping down, real angular back roof, and you try to put somebody in the back seat and, well, they just don't fit. But now we've kind of had enough of the exterior of this car, and actually before we go, one other defining feature of this car that is only available on the 3.5 SR are these wheels. These are painted silver aluminum alloy wheels. These are, I believe they're 18 inches. Yep, these are 18-inch silver painted aluminum alloy wheels. Now you can only get these on the 3.5 SR. You could get them on the 2.5, but only as an optional extra if you upgrade to like the highest available 2.5 liter trim, which I believe is the 2.5 SL. But this one here, you can only have it as a 3.5 S or 3.5 SR. Now, being a top-level trim, this car does come with Nissan's intelligent key. So, of course, here's your key fob. It's basically the same thing that Nissan has been using since the invention of their intelligent key system. As you can see with this car, they have both the keys. So if you want to come buy it, you will get 2 keys with this vehicle. But anyways, how the smart key works, for those of you who are absolutely clueless, you put the key in your pocket, and as long as the car recognizes the key fob, you have these little buttons here on the door. So as you can see, the car's locked, you can't get in. Hit the button once. 1 beep indicates the vehicle's unlocked. Now you can hit it twice in a rapid succession, and the first beep means that you've unlocked the driver's door, and the second beep means that you've unlocked the other door. But then you hit it again, and if it beeps twice, that means the vehicle's locked. Pretty simple. Now, of course, being a coupe, the doors on this car are absolutely huge. They do stick out quite a good ways. So if you're looking for a car that's going to give you the best kind of exit space in tighter parking spaces, this is not going to be it. But like I said, this one here is not the most loaded out Altima 3.5 SR. Again, like I said, it's missing things like leather seats, navigation, and so on, but this gives us a good idea of what a sort of more basic two-door sports coupe should actually be. Now, one thing I do like is actually how they've kind of made these seats feel. They're extraordinarily soft. I mean, Nissan actually did a pretty darn good job making these seats actually feel almost like sort of micro suede. Not as smooth as Alcantara, but it's still very, very smooth. And the bottom of these seats is very, very plush. As far as the seats themselves go, a set of buckets may have been a little bit nicer because they are a little bit flat, but you do actually have some decent bolstering as well. Now, even though this is a basic model 3.5 SR, you still do get the standard powered amenities. Of course, as you saw, the intelligent keyless access. You've got automatic one-touch driver and passenger windows. They're automatic in both directions. You got power door locks along with the keyless entry, window locks, and of course power mirrors. You have your power trunk release, traction control. You have a manual tilt, minimum a tilting steering wheel. You can actually get tilt and telescope on the newer Altimas. I'll have to figure out if this one is or not. This is the first time in a long time I've actually been in one of these Altima coupes, so a little bit of a memory refresher here. You also do have a power reclining and power distance control seat. You do have manual height adjustment, which is kind of interesting, or manual lumbar support, I should say, now that I think about it, because you have the height adjustment courtesy of this little button here. Then, of course, you have your fuel filler cap release and whatnot as well. Now, stepping inside of this thing, the step-in height is not bad. You don't have to basically fall into this thing. You do have to duck your head a bit, because even though the door space is quite large, there really is not a whole lot of room to actually get your head in. But then again, it's not a subcompact car, so you're not going to waylay your head, even if you're like 5'6", 5'7", or whatever. Now, looking directly in front of the driver, this is typical Nissan design language. The steering wheel is leather wrapped. Same goes for the shifter knob. It does have kind of this perforated texture to it, which does add a nice little touch. Perforated leather inserts here at about 9 and 3. And of course, you have all of your typical controls. You have your cruise control, and you also have your radio buttons, including your volume control. As far as I know, I don't think this car, well, it does have hands-free Bluetooth. It's up here, which is kind of odd, because if someone wants to make a call, the last thing I'd want to be doing is reaching up here on the ceiling to actually make that call. Nowadays, especially with the newer Altimas, they have the buttons down here on the steering wheel. But as far as everything else is concerned inside of this Altima, I was actually quite surprised with how soft touch some of the materials are in here. Normally in a car kind of like this, you expect a lot of heavy plastics and things like that, but looking at the dashboard actually is somewhat rubberized. It's not plush leather or anything like that, but if you push on it hard enough, you can actually feel it give a good bit, especially over the airbag cover. It's a little bit firmer over here. This car does have a built-in passenger airbag. You also have a dual stage front impact airbag, but as far as touching everything else, including even the gauge binnacle, where you would expect to find a lot of hard touch plastics, the only real plasticky things I can find are like right here, the surrounds for the air vents and things like that. And as far as the door itself goes, all of this is very, very much padded. I mean, it almost feels kind of like leather. It's actually very, very soft, very, very nice to feel. Then, of course, you have your cloth door panel, which is a lot firmer, but you also have, again, more of that kind of micro suede-like material right here on the armrest. Now, when it comes to starting this vehicle, again, the keyless intelligent key fob is pretty simple to use. You have the key fob within the vehicle, anywhere. It could be in the cup holder, it could be in your pocket, it could be in your purse, it could be wherever the heck you want it to be. And all you do is just keep the key fob in the vehicle, put your foot on the brake, and then hit this chrome ring start button in the dash to fire it up. And again, what you're hearing is Nissan's VQ Series 3.5 liter twin cam V6. Now this thing again cranks out almost 300 horsepower, and it just makes a wonderful noise. Just sounds absolutely wonderful. I absolutely love the sound of that engine, especially when it gets going. Now, when I talked to you guys earlier about the continuously variable automatic transmission, I wanted to kind of let you know how kind of big of a letdown it is, especially for me. I love to hear the sound of a car actually shifting gears, and albeit this thing is a continuously variable automatic, it does actually have a simulated manual mode. So if you put the car in drive, you can knock it over. You don't get paddle shifters of any kind, but if you knock it over to the left-hand side where the manual mode is, if you pull it down, it simulates the gear changes like what you would find in a conventional automatic. But if you were to leave it in drive, what it basically does is it raises it all the way to the red line, and then it just stays there. So basically, it's as if, like, when you rev a car when it's stationary, you could put your foot on the gas, and if you're stupid enough, you take it all the way to red line, and it just sits there. Well, that's what happens with the CVT when you're driving. So when you put your foot on the gas, it races it all the way up to the red line and then it stays there, but the car continues to accelerate. So its main goal is really fuel efficiency and things like that, but it's certainly not my cup of tea. Speaking of the transmission, I'll go over it one more time. This is Nissan's Xtronic CVT, or continuously variable automatic. The manual mode does have 6 speeds, so it's kind of like the best of both worlds, but you still don't get the driving thrills of like a typical transmission when you're actually, you know, shifting the manual gears. Again, this car doesn't have navigation, doesn't have a backup camera. The center console here, I actually like the fact it's a little bit more simplistic than having one with navigation and so on. Even the newer Altimas, I'd say they're just as simplistic as this. Little less button laden in a lot of areas, but as far as this one goes, this actually is not too bad. Now, this car here does not have the optional Bose audio system. If you were to get the 3.5 SR with, say, like the navigation package and the technology package, you would be throwing in things such as leather seats, the optional Bose audio system, navigation, and so on. But this one here, I mean, it sounds pretty good.
Xfinity has literally changed my life. I mean, I'm in a new home.
Now this one here does not have a iPod USB integration. It does have the auxiliary import though, right up here in the kind of lower right hand corner of your radio functions. You do have the ability to like turn off the display and so on, like so on and so forth. You do have the ability to mute the radio. You have a CD player, AM and FM, CD, auxiliary, and also you have like random and repeat scanning the radio, and also your preset radio stations, not to mention the ever famous audio controls that allow you to control bass, treble, fade, and so on. You also have a fun little beep that plays whenever you hit the button. Everything else up here, these kind of aircraft style ventilation or vents, you do have nice little chrome rings around them. I mean, they added nice little touches here and there to kind of make this car feel a little bit special. But again, some of the build quality, it just doesn't feel up to par in certain places. Now, the air conditioning is a single zone climate control system. You have your temperature controls over here on the far right. Push the temperature knob to turn on just the AC. You have maximum air conditioning followed by all of your climate zones. So you got your face and your feet, face and front defrost, or just your feet. You have your rear defroster just the front defroster, and also your rear defroster is these two buttons down here. Then of course your fan speed over here on the left with all the way up to the right, just like that. Then, of course, you also have air conditioning recycling by pushing the fan speed knob over here on the left. Now, this car has so many storage cubbies and holes in it, I'm pretty surprised it doesn't come with a label from the Container Store on it, because there is just so many like places to hide things in this car. It's absolutely ridiculous. You have this giant cubby hole down here, no USB, but as you can see, you do get a 12-volt alternating current outlet or AC outlet down there. Again, that material, very plasticky, kind of cheap feeling, but again, I'm not going to be putting my hands down there very often. You do have this painted silver trim that surrounds the gear shifter, which is nice. But as far as everything else, a lot of this stuff is kind of this is where you start to see the cheaper plastics. So you can see some of this stuff kind of wobbles around. It can break a bit easier than most cars, but then again, it's Japanese. That happens sometimes. The storage compartment here in the center, as you can see, it's dual tier. So you have a nice small little cubby here in the middle. Then of course you have a giant hole right down here in the middle. I think now that I stand corrected, it may have a USB. Nope, I'm wrong. I thought there was something you could lift up and actually get access to a USB port. But other than that, you have another 12-volt alternating current outlet down there in the base. And also your center console is plush, and it feels kind of like something, believe it or not, even though this is a Nissan, it feels like something out of a European luxury car. I mean, it's padded, and the suede or the microfiber feels very much like suede or Alcantara. It's weird how Nissan has actually made that kind of perfected. Now, as far as the sunroof goes, it's just a single little bitty sunroof, as you can see, the controls of which are just right here. And you got miles of blue sky to look at. Close it up. Now, as far as headroom goes in here, as you can see, there's really not much to be had. I mean, my head is almost against the ceiling. I'm 6'1", so there is a little bit more room to be anticipated in here. But as far as leg room goes, I'm very comfortable. My feet are nice and stretched out. I got good grip on the pedals, so it is a relatively nice place to be. Now, one final touch that I did not mention, some of these Altimas came with this little slot down here. If per se you're the type of person who actually likes to know that your key fob is in the vehicle somewhere, you can take this key fob and stick it into the slot right there, and that is the other way that you can start the vehicle. So let's say, for instance, maybe your car doesn't recognize your key fob or whatever. You can take this key, insert it into this little slot here, and the car will then recognize it. And if you want to take it with you, you just pull it right out and it comes away with you. So now that we've kind of had an exploration of all this, let's go ahead and, for one, we'll roll the window down. But let's go ahead and take a peek under the hood. And of course, when you shut the door, this having the intelligent key access, you can hear that nice little series of beeps to let you know, hey, the key fob's left the vehicle, I need it back in me. Well, don't worry, Altima, we'll put it back in here in just a second. But let's go ahead and take a look under your skin. So like I said, buried underneath this rather long engine bay sits Nissan's 3.5 liter dual overhead cam 24 valve V6. Again, this is their VQ35DE V6. It's been installed in so many of Nissan's cars. It's been installed here in the Altima, the Maxima. It's been installed in some cars like the Pathfinder, and so on and so forth. So it's really one of the most versatile engines that Nissan has actually produced. The numbers are pretty decent for this car. It's 270 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. You can put regular or premium unleaded gas in it. It's recommended that you use the higher grade, I guess, for a motor like this, being a higher performance V6 to get the most for your money. Fuel economy ratings, definitely not the best, especially with the V6. The 4-cylinder option, the 2.5 liter QR25 inline 4 is probably going to be your better bet if you want fuel efficiency. But as for the V6, you're going to get about 20 in the city, 27 on the highway. So still relatively good. And if you probably tickle it, you can actually get over 30 out of this car. I do love the sound of the build quality though. The hood doesn't slam with a big tinny clunk. It's actually nice and solid. So now that we've had a good look under the hood and what's directly in front of the driver, let's go ahead and get back inside of this thing and take a look at the rest of it. Now, one of the cool things, just kind of speaking offhand, is the door pillars. A lot of coupes like this will have pillarless windows, and that kind of degrades the rigidity of the vehicle. But as you can see, this one here got nice solid doors, and as far as the build quality goes, you shut the door, and it's got this nice solid clunk to it. And of course, the small beep to follow. Anyways, getting into the back seat is not too difficult to do. You just move the seatbelt out of the way, pull up on the little trigger here, and the seat goes forward. Now, getting into the back of this thing can be a challenge for those of us who are of the taller type. As I said, I'm 6'1", but as you can see, I can shoehorn my way into the back here. And once the seat is in place, so there's where the seat would be. As you can see, I am quite cramped back here. My knees are in the back of the driver's, well, back, even with this nice little indentation here in the seat. It is kind of funny though that Nissan was thinking of rear passengers, because you do have cup holders in each side of the vehicle. But as far as headroom goes, I really don't think I'm gonna want my head going through this back windshield if we were in an accident. I mean, this isn't the safest car that Nissan's ever built, but I really don't want my head full of glass shards. So not really meant for big, tall people here in the back seat. I'd rather be in the front. But anyways, getting out of this thing, if we can weasel our way out of here, is not too difficult either. As you can see, all I gotta do is just shoehorn my entire body out of there. And then you just tip the seat back and voila, there you go. So we'll go ahead and open the trunk too. Unlock the rest of the vehicle. And again, that same annoying beep follows. You got your giant fuel filler cap. That thing is enormous. Now lifting up the trunk, I mean, as you can see, the boot floor, as a lot of people would like to call it, or the floor of the trunk actually is a lot higher than you might expect. It's kind of like the same floor pan or the same trunk pan that you'd find in a Corvette, believe it or not, because a Corvette, you know, it's not deep, but it's wide, it's long, so you can actually put a good few things in here. As you can see, the seats are 60-40 split fold. You can see the tiny little split in the seats right there, so you just pull on one of these cords and the seat will fall forward, no problem at all. So you should have room to put longer things in there, but sad as it is, you can't actually put too much kind of larger objects toward the back of this trunk. So not too good marks in terms of trunk space. Now again, like all of my other videos, I am not the salesperson here. I'm just the person who kind of goes over each of these cars and explains them all to you. So if you want to find out any more information about this Altima Coupe, I will put the vehicle's advertisement on Humble Hyundai's website, which is humblehyundai.com, and you can check it out in the video description box below. Now, you can get into the passenger seat via this large lever here. This one is manually adjustable, so you just pull on it. And as you can see, it slides forward, and getting in here is a lot easier. It's a lot easier than going in on the driver's side. So as you can see, I mean, now I can get into the passenger side of the vehicle, no problems whatsoever. Got plenty of room to come in, so it's best that you enter this car from the passenger side if you're trying to get into the back seat. Driver's side, not so much. And again, getting out, I mean, for a taller person myself, my back still hits this upper roof line, so I mean, not exactly the greatest thing in the world when it comes to stuff like that. But then you just pull up on the seat lever, tilt the seat back, and voila, you've got a passenger seat again. Now, getting into the passenger side of this thing, again, you do have to duck your head pretty good. It's comfortable, it's spacious, and as far as the seats go, like I said, kind of thicker pair of bolsters would be a little bit nicer, but as far as me, I'm a little bit wider up here in the torso and around my hip area as well. And I actually am feeling a good bit of comfort around in here, which is pretty good marks. I mean, again, for those who want a little bit something more sporty, you probably are going to want a pair of buckets in this car. The leather seats are very much similar to this, but they do give a little bit more support. Now, as far as the glove box goes, it's nice and deep. I mean, seriously, like I said, this car might as well come with a label from the Container Store, because you can put so much stuff in here. Look how deep that glove box is. That goes on forever. And you've even got a nice little shelf kind of located up here, though I don't think you want to put anything in there. That would kind of smash all your stuff to pieces. But anyways, as you can see, got all the books for it too, so you won't be very far away from an owner's manual if you need one. But overall, I mean, I really like the Altima Coupe. It's definitely an understated two-door sports car. And I mean, if somebody wants a car that's reliable, solid, but they want that two-door sporty feeling and don't want to have to sacrifice for a mid-size four-door car to get the same performance, then the Altima Coupe is definitely the type of car you want to look at. So viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this fun and full-on walkthrough of this 2011 Nissan Altima Coupe 3.5 SR. If you want to find out more information about any of our inventory, just visit humblehyundai.com and visit the description box below to get the appropriate phone numbers and the link to this particular vehicle's advertisement. Again, this has been Grand Prix GTP02 here up at Humble Hyundai, and I hope you guys have had an awesome time. So on that note, I hope to see you guys again real soon, and have a good one, everybody.